What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today I'm going to be doing a follow-up video to that Phenax one I recently released, where I tested him out in the unkillable team that I did make. I asked you guys in the comments which champions you wanted to see next in Clan Boss, and the two most common champions that I found in the comments were Dervish the Uncommon as well as Cupidus. Now I do have to say that Dervish is actually the first uncommon to my knowledge that I've actually ever maxed, masteried, and booked in this game, and I've been playing for over a year, so that was kind of exciting for me for no apparent reason at all. And if you had told me when I started doing content creation that I would actually be using an uncommon champion in an unkillable team and actually getting decent damage out of it, I probably would have said you were lying. So what I wanted to do is, instead of breaking this up into two different videos, I didn't want to make it too boring because I figured that was boring, so I'm going to try something a little bit new here with a new layout, and you can let me know what you think. I think this has a lot of potential for my future videos and what I can do. Before we get into that, let's start going over the champions we're talking about here today. First champion we do have is Dervish. She's a really high multiplier on the A1. She attacks 2 times at random, and she also has an extremely high multiplier on the A3. This isn't a champion you're going to be building accuracy on. She's strictly there for the raw damage. Moving on to the next champion, we do have Cupidus here. He does have the attack aura, which could potentially be huge in this team since we are running with a lot of attack champions as our other characters. We have an A1 ability that does increase damage if there's any debuffs. Obviously with Dracomorph you can expect debuffs to be present on the boss at all times. We have an A3 that hits 3 times, each hit having a chance to place that HP burn debuff for 2 turns. This also has a rather high multiplier for a 3 hit. And finally we have the hardest hitting ability, Flame Out, puts an attack up on this champion and hits the target extremely hard, as I just mentioned. So now that we've gone over that, let's go over to this new layout that I'm talking about. I'm going to be running 2 runs at the same exact time here. On the right we do have Cupidus, and on the left we have Dervish, just for reference. So let's start these out at the same time. One thing I do want to note in your heads is which one do you think will end up doing more damage overall? I want to know what you guys think. We do have the advantage from a legendary being on the right as well as the attack aura, but we also have this champion who has extremely high multipliers, and I can definitely tell you the multipliers are significantly higher than Cupidus. So that's what I kind of want to know from you guys. So as always, the main point's going to be the attack benefit to Dracomorph, to Brachus, and to Towers A1 on the right. So already off the bat we see 120,000 per A1, which is definitely phenomenal damage from an uncommon, not something I would expect. We saw 115 there from that A2 ability. And we have 85,000 on a counterattack from Cupidus on the right here. I had a pretty good idea who was going to win, and I did end up guessing right, so I'm really curious to see if you guys can figure out who you think is going to win. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of RNG, however, it was sided enough to where I could make a pretty good assumption that one side, regardless of RNG, was the stronger. Now that we've gone over that, one thing that I do want to talk about is setup. As we can see, I actually did find out that I can actually start this unkillable team on full auto straight out of the gate, which is very uncommon for unkillable teams. Usually there's some type of setup, and I actually didn't realize this even when I made my initial video, which is kind of shocking since I did test it so many times. So for the left here, there was literally no setup required. I threw it straight on auto. For the right here, something very important happened that I think is worth covering here. As mentioned, Flame Out, the A3 of Cupidus, is the hardest hitting ability. So what I did to maximize potential, with that being on a 3-turn cooldown, since he is fully booked, I made sure Dracomorph used his defense down and weaken, and then Flame Out was used next, so this always stayed in the same cycle when going through. So if you have champions who work that way, and you have a defense down champion, a Dracomorph, a Venus, a Razin, any champion like that, usually the debuff runs off before the stun round. You don't want any champion with a 3-turn cooldown to be using their hardest hitting abilities in that stun round, because you're going to lose a ton of value from that champion throughout the duration of the fight. So that's something to keep in mind here. As far as stats go, I'm not going to be showing stats in this video. If you want to know the stats of the 4 champions that I'm not covering today, you can take a look at that Phenax video. As far as Cupidus goes, Cupidus is currently wearing 295% crit damage. He has 5.6 thousand attack. and he has about 220 accuracy, so rather low accuracy, kind of a gamble on the HP burn. It is an important part, but it wasn't important enough for me to sacrifice damaging abilities, in my opinion, to stack that full HP burn. So when it lands, it's definitely a bonus. When it doesn't land, obviously it's suboptimal. Moving on to Dervish, this is the only problem with using an uncommon champion like this. This isn't necessarily realistic use, because the numbers you're seeing on the left side of the screen here are going to be very hard to replicate. I actually had to take gear off of some of my best geared champions just to make Dervish have good enough stats to my standards to where I thought she could definitely compete with the Cupidus here. So she has 275% crit damage, 5.2 thousand attack, and obviously 100% crit rate. Now the hard part about gearing Dervish is, along with her lower base attack, she also has the weak end of the crit damage. While her base crit damage is 50, Cupidus is sitting pretty at that 63% mark, which is really cool and definitely helps. I know you can say 13 crit damage, what can it do? Over 50 rounds, it actually does a lot. So now that we're moving on to close to the mid end of the fight, let's see what this damage looks like on the left side of the screen. 26.2 million in turn 22, 27.9 million in turn 22 for the Cupidus team. So if you guessed that, congratulations, you did guess right. The Cupidus team is going to do more based on the attack aura he has, based on the HP burn dealing damage. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to come out on top for damage. I'm pretty sure Dervish is going to end up out damaging Cupidus just based on how much more damage she does having that 2-hit on the A1 compared to Cupidus's single hit A1. Even though his other abilities do hit pretty hard, they are on a cooldown. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wait for this to finish, and I will see you all at that recap screen where we can break this down side by side. Alright guys, so as you can see here, the Dervish team ended up doing 60.21 million damage compared to that Cupidus team doing 63.2 million damage. So there was a 3 million damage swing almost on the dot. Going over the Dervish damage individually, we have 6.4 million from Tower, 3.7 from Skull Crusher, 17.3 million damage from this uncommon champion Dervish, which is awesome to see, 19.1 from Dracomorph, and 13.4 from Brackus. Comparing this now to the Cupidus side, where we have 15.5 million damage from Cupidus, obviously that's 2 million damage less than Dervish. We have 3.6 million damage from Skull Crusher, so Skull Crusher did almost 200,000 damage less than the Skull Crusher on the Dervish side based on RNG, as well as 5.5 million damage from Rushguard the Tower with the attack aura, which was very surprising when you look at the Dervish side where the tower did 6.4 million. Now we're comparing the HP aura to the attack aura, as well as some RNG in between. Next we have Dracomorph doing 22.4 million damage on the right, significantly higher since Dracomorph gets extreme benefit from any type of increased attack because his A1 hits so hard. And then finally Brackus, who's an absolute monster, doing 16 million damage with that attack aura, up almost 3 million damage from the team without the attack aura. So yes, RNG does play a role. I do get messages about this often asking me if Plarium changed anything with the clan boss. There's a gigantic threshold with how many times your mastery procs, the crit damage. There's always a high and low number for crit damage, so you can get very unlucky. If you have a poisoner, the poisons can get resisted. Defense down and weak can also get resisted. So you're definitely looking at least a 10 million damage swing if you get extremely unlucky compared to extremely lucky in all of these different procs that can happen or get resisted. Now while I did watch both of these runs closely, I did calculate some of the RNG on both of them, and it did end up where the left side of the screen, being the Dervish side, did have extremely high RNG as far as landing masteries and how much damage they were doing, and the right side of the screen actually had low RNG or what was proccing, what was getting resisted, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of potential for the team with Cupidus. He does a ton of damage, so this team is obviously the clear winner. And if I had to estimate, I would probably say the cap out on this team would be around 67 million compared to the left side, where I think the cap out is closer to 61, 62 million damage. So overall, it's still awesome to see a champion like Dervish being used in Unkillable. However, I wouldn't recommend anyone trying to build this champion. As mentioned before, he's extremely hard to build, and even though you only really need 35 million damage to 2 key, I think this is a very risky investment since many champions can do exactly what she does. One thing I do like, especially about Cupidus, is I think Plarium can take a solid point from this comparison here. Here we have Dervish, who does better raw damage but offers nothing else to the team, compared to someone like Cupidus who has that attack aura that can increase the value of many other players. So I think that if you wanted to move up in a scale from uncommon, rare, epic, all the way to legendary, slowly giving more and more benefit until you hit that legendary tier, that would be a much better way to balance champions based on the rarity of those champions. I think if an uncommon is going to outdamage a legendary with the same type of gear, that legendary does need to have something that Cupidus has, being that very strong aura for all battles and a debuff such as HP burn. Alright guys, that wraps up my video for today. Give me some feedback, let me know what you think. What do you think of this split screen option here as far as comparing this? I honestly had a lot of fun doing this. I think in my opinion this was a really cool way to show 2 runs at the same time, same exact teams, just using different champions and kind of seeing how they work when competing against each other. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve this, if the screens were too small. Leave your feedback and I'll do the best I can for the next video I do. I'm probably going to be taking this team down since I do have to sit in a test clan when testing keys like this, based on the time zone difference of myself and the rest of my clanmates. However, I do thoroughly enjoy clan boss even though I'm supposed to be retired, so I'll probably be building some different type of unkillable team that's more friendly to all affinities, and definitely leave any suggestions below on further champions you want me to continue to test, especially with this huge rebalance patch coming up. If any champions look promising, I have no problem building a similar team to this, coming back to the test clan for a few days and doing another side-by-side comparison on what champions can now do with any changes that may have been done to them once we get that rework in September. So as always, thanks a bunch for watching. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like this video, and I will see you all in the next upload.